being vegan makes you stronger than meat eaters. Now, I don't mean this in just a philosophical or moral sense, but in actual numbers, strength, lifts, size. And this might seem unbelievable to a lot of people because being vegan has such an association with being weak, not being able to get enough protein, not being able to get enough nutrients. But none of that is true. And the fact is, being vegan is not only not a disadvantage, it is an advantage in itself, a significant one, a superpower that can give you double the progress of meat eaters to such an extent that they are just simply unable to keep up with you. These, what you're seeing on screen right now, are the protein sources that you can get. And as long as you get enough protein, which isn't that difficult as soon as you know these foods, as soon as you know complete proteins and how to combine incomplete protein sources, it's easy. I get 160 grams of protein every single day, which is more than I need to put on muscle at an optimal rate, but I get that anyway because 0.8 grams per pound of body weight, which for me would be about 150 grams, is sufficient to build muscle at an optimal rate. And you can get every single essential nutrient on a plant-based diet. What you're seeing is exactly how to do that. When it comes to training style, if all things are equal in terms of nutrition and recovery, there's no difference in terms of the progress that a vegan makes and the progress that a meat eater makes. And if you have the right approach, where you combine street lifting, so weighted calisthenics, you combine that with gymnastic rings, you incorporate mobility as well. These are the three pillars of limitless strength. You do these three and no one's keeping up with you because you build strength and capacity and body freedom that others dream about, and you do it quickly as well. So that's why it's not a disadvantage. But why is it an advantage? Better recovery. Vegan foods, plant-based foods cause less inflammation, which means that your body is able to recover more quickly. And plant-based diets are going to be higher in carbs. And carbs have been demonized unfairly in the last decade or so, especially with the rise of keto and these carnivore spaces. But the truth is, carbs are the foundation for recovery when it comes to food, when it comes to having enough glycogen, having your body be able to reproduce energy at an effective rate. Carbs are what you need. And you have carbs, you have fiber to digest them properly on a plant-based diet, especially when you incorporate enough whole foods. You have less inflammation. That is a significant boost to recovery that meat eaters and people who have fewer carbs or fewer plant-based foods, they simply are unable to get. And another reason why being vegan makes you stronger than meat eaters, and this is extremely underrated, is because it provides a much stronger motivation. And motivation is the basis, that desire is the basis for what you achieve. You don't achieve your highest goals, you achieve your minimum standards. And when it comes to motivations, to train, to go to the gym, to get into better shape and all of this kind of stuff, we can divide it into 3 levels, you might say. Level 1 is these shallow motivations, which are valid to an extent. Like, sure, you're okay if you have some motivations to lose weight, to gain muscle, to look better. A lot of guys are under the impression that getting in better shape will help when it comes to women and stuff like that, which is true to some extent, but as long as you're healthy, right? It's mostly going to appeal to guys more, and obviously like gym bros have talked about this plenty. But these shallow motivations that are a bit more to do with just a certain aesthetic, those work to an extent. There's something that motivate many people, but they're short term. And one of the reasons why so many people quit the gym, why 90% of people don't stay consistent with the gym and quit within just a few months, is because those results take longer than people expect. So these motivations, they can be fine to start with, but they do tend to be quite short term. They don't tend to be something that inspires consistency for a long time. So these are the level 1 shallow motivations. Now, the deeper motivations, at level 2 we might say, are much more powerful. The pursuit of health and realizing that the desire of a sick man is only one thing. Someone who is rich and someone who has good health and all of this, their desires will always be going on as long as you have health. Like, your desire, your want for everything, your want for this and that, but take away health, and richness in other areas doesn't matter anymore. The person who is sick, the person who is ill, he only has that desire for health. And so, the pursuit of health is a deeper, better, longer term motivation, for sure, 100%. And you have different kinds of these motivations as well that are a bit more deep. When it comes to living out your potential, it is a shame for man to grow old without seeing the beauty and strength of which his body is capable. That's what Socrates said, and whether you're religious or not, that chance that you have on this planet is a singular chance to live out that potential, whether you see it as purely materialistic or you see it as God-given. However you want to interpret that, that is a single opportunity for you to see that. And if you don't live to that potential, that cements itself as permanent regret, and regret is emotion that is inescapable. It's something that will stick with you, and if it's never solved, that is a terrible pain to be left with on your deathbed. And so even when it comes to training, if you never ever see what you're capable of, and that means something to you, if it meant something to you to actually see that capability, then there's this deeper motivation. Then we have even deeper than this, moral motivations, level 3 motivations. And when it comes to vegans, you can have these level 1 motivations, these level 2 motivations, but the moral motivation means that you have a moral duty to do this. And people who have moral principles, strong moral principles, they can spend their entire lives, so we're speaking properly long term, not just in the medium to longish term for a few years, no, lifetime pursuits. People who have moral values can commit themselves to a certain path. They can commit themselves to being abstinent from alcohol or other pleasureful activities or whatever it is. People who have this moral motivation are set on that for life. And when it comes to veganism, this is a hidden superpower that is present, because you cannot in any circumstance afford to be weak as a vegan. It only plays into this disgusting stereotype that already exists, and it exists for a reason because many people play into it, which is that veganism is associated with weakness, physical frailty, and every weak vegan is 10 meat eaters turned off. It is worse to be a weak vegan than to eat meat, at least in this kind of consequentialist way of thinking about it. It is genuinely worse to do that. You cannot afford to be a weak vegan, and this gives you this powerful, potent motivation. Imagine being that 70-year-old, 80-year-old vegan who's still in good shape, who can still bench 2 plates, who can still do an iron cross on the rings, who accomplished these things many decades ago, and many decades later is still at a level that is far beyond what people believe to be even remotely possible at that age. Think of how powerful that is in terms of activism compared to all of these other forms that are very hit and miss. Like dialogue, sure, it can work, it can sow seeds, but most people are quite stubborn in their ways, so for the vast majority of people, it's not going to really prove anything. It's not really going to convince anyone. When it comes to a lot of these cringe displays, like, it's not doing anything, man. It's not. And there's a reason why a lot of vegan activism has a bad name, because, man, a lot of it is cringe. But when it comes to this, how can it have a negative effect? To be an example of perfect mastery over your own body, of your own health, of your own mind, because that physical training is mental training. is self-expression. It shows what you are and who you are and what you do. And so, that is a powerful motivation. Combine it with the other layers when it comes to health, when it comes to living out your potential, even if you have the shallower motivations when it comes to aesthetics. Combine all three of these and you have an unshakable triad of motivation on 3 different levels that others simply are unable to tap into. This, combined with a better recovery, means that you have a foundation of belief and of physicality that cannot be matched, that cannot be kept up with when it comes to meat eaters. But then people might have this objection, right? Paris. If it was such a superpower, how come we've not seen any insanely strong vegan strength athletes? Because yeah, there might be some bodybuilders like Patrick Baboumian, and there might be some sports people like Lewis Hamilton or Serena Williams or something like that. But when it comes to the strength space, we haven't really seen many vegan athletes. And there definitely are some. For example, Alex Leonidas, even though he wasn't vegan beforehand, he's maintained and built a lot of his strength whilst being on a plant-based diet. But okay, what about someone who's built all of their strength on a plant-based diet, who was vegan before actually becoming consistent with training? Well, we've not seen someone do that yet. But that's simply because no one has tried. Because being a top athlete is already very rare. Like 0.01% of people will ever get to insane levels of strength. We're talking like 50 kilo muscle ups, 200 kg bench, whatever kinds of levels that we're looking towards. Very, very few people will accomplish that non-stop. Then when it comes to veganism is a minority. Anywhere from 2 to 5% of people in a developed country will tend to be vegan. So, combining those two and having someone who's vegan with that motivation, who's put these dots together, that hasn't happened yet. But that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to fill this gap. I'm someone who is committed on this path to overcome these limits, to be the example for people, to show what is possible when it comes to veganism, when it comes to having these values. I have been vegan for 5 years. All of my consistent training, which has been in the last 3.5 years, has been on a vegan diet. I've gained 20 kg of size, gaining a lot of lean mass in that, having incredible progress in strength when it comes to many, many different areas: calisthenics, powerlifting, bodybuilding, running, mobility, overcoming so many different barriers. From a point where I had no sporty background, nothing whatsoever, and I've built everything up from scratch, from an obese kid to now being athletic, muscular, and achieving all of this in my earlier years of training at just 22 years old. So, be the example. Be someone who is able to show that veganism has power to it. Moral power, physical power. No one talks about this, but there's so much to discover. So, if you're fed up of being one of these weak vegans, contributes to the shame of the movement, then check out the top link in the description, click the vegan option, and let's talk about how to make you stronger than you ever thought possible. Because remember, every weak vegan is 10 meat eaters turned off. This is the most powerful form of activism you could ever do, the best decision for yourself, for others, for the animals. Make it happen. And as always, remember bro, keep improving.